Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. The Canadians find a way to do pretty much nothing tonight and get themselves a 3-0 loss against the New Jersey Devils in what was, again, a very, non-eventful game. The Canadians had, 8 total shots on net for, a large majority of that game, through 2 periods there. It just not a whole lot happening. And I feel like, there's really no point in breaking down the game at all. Nothing really happened other when, when Josh Anderson had a good hit on Jack Hughes, and we had a little fight about it. Bolduc got like pummeled at one point because of, some pretty lame hit in my opinion, but I don't know. A couple of fights, couple of great chances for Cole Caulfield that he just couldn't really find the right grip on. Couldn't really get the right shot off. He had a couple one-timer opportunities, couple chances on the power play. Nothing seemed to be going. And I feel like that's pretty much the entire breakdown. None of the goals that we got scored on were really all that offensive. Like a couple just like lucky goals that they got in, but obviously they were always going to score just because of the fact that the Canadians were just not dialed into the game. They were not really ready to play. It looked like they were just kind of like skating around. They were just hoping that the game was going to be over, and that I don't know what was going on in this one. And I think really what I think that the biggest kind of thing to look at in this one is I think that the Canadians, especially Cole Caulfield, but the entire team is really feeling the pressure of the moment, and that moment being a lot of things. I think biggest one being, trying to get Caulfield that 50th goal. I feel like the entire team, was kind of rallied around that effort, and it's kind of causing a little bit of the yips in a little way. I feel like that, or just they're just all feeling that moment. They're all just kind of feeling. They're all kind of gripping their sticks a little bit tighter in this game. They're kind of all focused on something other than what they should actually be doing. And obviously, like I think Cole Caulfield is a guy who scored 49 goals in the NHL, and he's done so for a reason. I don't think that he needs the support of every single guy trying to feed him with every single pass, and making the sole focus of the game trying to get him his 50th goal. I don't think he needs that. I think he's able to create offensively with or without that support. Obviously you need to pass him the puck, otherwise he's not going to score. But I think in general, I don't think that we should be focusing all of our energy to that, and that seems to be what's going on right now, and that's kind of, I think, it is going to hamper us for the rest of the season until he actually does score that 50th goal. I feel like there's just way too much emphasis going into that right now, and just a lot of lack of focus into the other detailed aspects of the game. And again, that's just like we're a young team still, and I feel like I talk about that a lot, about how young this group is and how inexperienced they are with just the ebb and flow of an NHL season. This is really the first time, as we've said a lot, this is the first time that the Canadians are actually in a position where there are expectations for them. A lot of times, even going into last season, there were really not any expectations at all. We were really supposed to be, a team looking for a lottery pick at the end of last year, and we ended up making the playoffs. And now, now that we've made the playoffs that one time, and now we've made the playoffs again, there's expectations for this group to be solid on a nightly basis. Over the last couple of weeks, that has been the case. We're, fresh off of an 8-game win streak. We just lost our first game in 9 total games there. So, obviously, we're playing above expectations in my opinion, but there are expectations, and I think that this team is still trying to grapple around the idea that that's like even a thing for them at this point. Obviously, it's tough to be a team that performs to the best of their abilities 82 games in a full season. There's going to be games where the Canadians don't find a way, and I think that one thing that this young group has that other groups don't have is just that emotional aspect. They're very young. They don't really know how to manage the emotions of the moment as well as other teams might. So I feel like things like this, where you've got the pressure of the entire city of Montreal looking down on you and Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki trying to hit their point numbers and all that kind of stuff. I feel like you can really kind of tell on the bench, especially with Cole Caulfield. I feel like every time I saw him in the video on the bench in this game, you could really just see the emotion of the moment on his face. You could see how, he was feeling in that game. I felt like it just didn't really look like he was very comfortable in that game. It didn't really look like he, felt like he was, at the top of his game in this one. And it's really unfortunate. Obviously, the fans mean well. And, obviously we all, I'm sitting here talking about it. We all want him to score that 50th goal. We want him to have that moment. But, like I feel like the entire team, and Cole especially, is really, feeling the moment of this entire thing. He's really feeling the pressure of getting that 50th goal. And I feel like until the team as a whole can kind of like settle down from that and go back to the way that we have been playing leading up to this, and the reason why we got here in the first place, until we get back to that, I don't think that Cole is going to score that 50th goal. We got to find a way to kind of revert things, go back a little bit to the way that we've been playing, the free style of play, the multi-dimensional hockey that we were talking about there. Like until we can get back to that, it's going to be very difficult for him to score that goal, because all the pressure is on him right now. I feel like the entire team is leaning on Cole Caulfield for that, the emotional support there of getting that goal. Like all of the momentum is kind of leaning on him right now. That's really tough for any player. Obviously Cole Caulfield is a very, intelligent player. He can do a whole lot of things out there. He's one of the best goal scorers in the NHL, obviously. But, obviously, like, he needs some support out there. And I feel like, the Canadiens need to do him a favor and do themselves a favor by, just getting back to the way that they've been playing previously. Until they do that, it's going to be difficult for them. But I do still think that, obviously with these 5 games remaining, Cole Caulfield is going to get that 50th goal. I can feel it coming. It's going to happen. He's getting tons of chances. Obviously today, just like the amount of chances that he got that just like went wrong off the stick or just didn't quite go. We got some, missing the net or whatever. Like eventually something's going to click, and he's going to get that 50th goal, and then we're just going to soar from there. But, until then, I just feel like, I felt like in this game specifically at home, with everybody watching, I felt like it was very tough for them. They were feeling the emotions of the moment, and that allowed the New Jersey Devils to kind of just get to work and grind us out and find a way to get some goals past us. So that's basically all that happened in this one. There's not too much else to say. It's just, obviously we all want Cole Caulfield to get that 50th goal. We want that to happen. And I do still think that it is going to happen. I feel like, he's going to get there. I feel like, he's way too good of a goal scorer to not get there. It's just the Canadiens need to settle down, including Cole Caulfield. They all need to settle down, settle into the game, get back to the basics, right? Get back to the just getting pucks in deep and, fighting for battles, winning your battles, supporting each other, getting pucks towards the net, all that kind of stuff. And as soon as we start getting back to that, I'm telling you, as soon as we start getting back to our game and just playing, like the team that we're playing as, a couple games ago when we were on that nice streak. As soon as we get to the back to that, Cole Caulfield is going to score that goal, and once he scores that goal, there'll be no stopping the Canadiens. So, again, it's an interesting one. That's pretty much all I have for the game itself. It's just like the emotional toll that takes on us, the pressure of that moment. I feel like got to us a little bit in this one. So hopefully, with the help of Martin St. Louis, they'll kind of revert a little bit, relax, and then we have another game coming up on Tuesday against the Florida Panthers there, where they'll have another chance to get that goal in a team where, like Florida definitely looks like a team that is kind of just throwing in the towel for this year. So, theoretically, this will be a game that we can get a big win in. You never know, obviously, especially, the Florida Panthers, they still got some solid players on that unit, but, a home game against the Florida Panthers and a team that isn't really doing a whole lot in these last couple of games that they've had there. I mean, another great chance there, so we'll have to see what happens there. But obviously, the good news, as I mentioned before, the Canadiens are in the playoffs. They're still fighting for that, their position, whoever they're going to, come up against in the playoffs here. Hopefully we can still, string a couple wins together, get home ice advantage perhaps, and get something going there. So it'll be very interesting to see in these remaining 5 games where the Canadiens end up in standings. But Obviously we can celebrate, we can feel a little bit of a sigh of relief that the Canadians have clinched a spot in the playoffs. And, obviously I'm very excited to go through the entirety of the playoffs with all of you guys, and see where things go here. I feel like, if we can get back, as I mentioned before, we can get back to that game that we've been playing over this 8-game win streak. We can get back to, that multifaceted hockey. We got multi-threat, situation. We're playing offense, we're playing decent defense. We've got some great goaltending going on right now. If we can string all of that together and bring all of that into game one of the playoffs, I'm not really sure how many teams in the NHL can take this team on and beat them in a 7-game series. So I'm very excited to see where things can go with what we have in this roster right now. But as of now, obviously you can't look too far ahead. It's definitely an emotional toll, right? We get mentally locked in, right? The team has to stay focused on the next task at hand, which is obviously the Panthers on Tuesday. So, it'll be very interesting to see where things go here. But yeah, that is pretty much all I have for this one. So thank you guys so much for watching. Cole Caulfield is going to score that 50th goal. Be assured it's going to happen, hopefully on Tuesday. But again, as I'm saying right now, as I've been saying, like until the Canadians can kind of settle down and get back to the way they've been playing previously, it's not going to happen. So they need to find a way to settle down and find a way to get back to their game, and then everything will click for them and it'll be great. So hopefully that'll all happen. Hopefully they get a little day off on Monday there, get things settled in. Martin St. Louis knock some sense into these guys a little bit, and then hopefully I will see you, after a big 2 points and a 50th goal. Hopefully we'll cross our fingers, but who knows? I just want to see a solid game and a solid 2 points in a win against the Florida Panthers on Tuesday. So again, that is all I have for you guys, and I will see you after that game on Tuesday.